the Pope and the Patriarch, A. Perri, commenting on the announcement made by the Vatican Holy See of an upcoming meeting in Cuba between Pope Francis and Kirill, the Patriarch of Moscow and all Russia. Many columnists have get into a misconception, hinting that it is an event of eminently political nature and tied to complex global geopolitical strategies. Some have even said that it would be a replacement of courtesies by Putin to the papal mediation that would have favored the Russian intervention in Syria. American acceptance. Not that the meeting announced haven't undoubted political implications, direct and indirect, and certainly it should not be forgotten, however, that the two persons who will exchange the Christian kiss in Havana are in charge of ecclesiastical organizations, although very different. Also have a strong propensity to play a political and religious role, but understand things, means able to distinguish them and call them for what they are. And the meeting of Cuba will be above all a religious meeting of two spiritual authorities, while meeting motivations are eminently religious and ecclesiastical. Although many continue to believe in an Orthodox Caesaropapism, it must be said that the Russian Orthodox Church is heir to another and more effective Byzantine concept, that of symphony, that is, the fusion of horizons between political power and spiritual strength, even if it is a concept and a general attitude that is unspeakable in purely legal terms. Its major impact in societies where prevailed Greek or Orthodox Christianity resulted in a certain primacy of political power and politics, to which reasons the same Orthodox religious authorities have always been very sensitive, but in overall terms it was, and is, a question of limitations and mutual conditioning about. All this therefore corresponds to organizational autonomy, spiritual and intellectual, of religious power in Orthodox societies. As in Soviet times, everything has been reduced to a minimum, and the KGB have heavily infiltrated the Russian ecclesiastical structures, and, even today, the lifestyle of the Moscow Patriarch is very similar to that of a high state official. The main objectives of today's Russian Church move along four main lines: strengthening the dominant role of the Russian Orthodox Church in Russian society, aim for supremacy in Orthodox world, replacing the current ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, reconstitute the political, religious, imperial and Soviet unit, goal, the latter, which is also designed to achieve the Orthodox leadership, then stand as the largest international spiritual institution capable of leading the resistance to deteriorate and anti-Christian aspects of modernization. The first goal had already been reached at the end of the Yeltsin era, when the 1997 law on religious organizations had returned to the Orthodox Church a legal primacy and had interposed major barriers to the spread of Protestantism and Catholicism in Russia. After his election in 2009, Kirill had then elaborated the doctrine of the Ruski Mir, Russian world, that is unbreakable religious unity between Russia, Ukraine, Belarus and Moldova. It is a doctrine of aggressive and intolerant of autocephaly and aspirations of cultural independence of those lands. A doctrine that has no few responsibilities in having created the political background on which it was engaged in 2014, the war in the east of Ukraine. But it is also a doctrine that serves to guarantee the Russian Church a predominant role in the Orthodox world, for the number of faithful, of religious organization centers, of places of spiritual life, without Ukraine, which has a number of parishes and faithful superior to those of Russia itself. Kirill dreamed to oust the ecumenical patriarch would vanish. The importance, for him, not to alienate the sympathies of the Ukrainians explains, for example, his singular lack the solemn ceremony of annexation of Crimea, chaired by Putin in 2014 and which was instead attended by the highest Islamic and Jewish religious authorities of Russia. On the other hand, the decrease of the preferences for the Russian Orthodox Church which has appeared in Ukraine in recent months and that does not make it more the majority Orthodox Church, the number of Ukrainian faithful who identify in the self-proclaimed Ukrainian autocephalous church would become recently higher than that of those who remain within the Russian church. It makes Kirill's position even more uncomfortable and is giving rise to some of the tougher stance taken by Kirill against the schismatics and nationalist Ukrainians. The Russian Orthodox Church is proclaimed, on the other hand, multinational, and this not only in order to cover itself faithful from Ukraine, Belarus, etc., but probably also in order to make herself a kind of universal Orthodox Church in fieri. In fact, on the Orthodox world are blowing restless winds, related to complex ecclesiological issues, that here we do not address, limiting ourselves to indicate that the problem of ecclesiastical jurisdiction on diaspora communities, who must guide the millions of Orthodox who now live in Western Europe, the Americas, Oceania, is closely linked to that of the Orthodox ecclesiastical primacy. One issue that seems to have come close to his resolution because it will be at the center of the Great Pan-Orthodox Council of 2016, prepared for about 50 years. And that will be the first in history. The 7 councils of the first millennium recognized by Orthodox churches took place before the separation between Catholics and Orthodox. The meeting will occur in Cuba, therefore, as part of the pre-conciliar strategies of Kirill, who is looking for an authoritative and ecumenical endorsement by Pope Francis. To get Kirill's steps back substantial, it was he who refused to invite the Pope to Russia, accusing Catholics of proselytism, of annexionismo against the canonical territory of the Russian Church, after the creation of Catholic dioceses in Russia by John Paul II, and above all of support for Greek Catholics. The so-called Uniate, that is faithful to the Orthodox Rite but who recognized in 1596 the papal primacy, which are about 10% of Ukrainians, concentrated in western Ukraine, and whose church was liquidated in 1946 by Stalin. Now, to make the meeting in Russia would have been even worse for Kirill, and then he preferred this solution, which will take place in no coincidence in Havana, where was formed a replica of the Russian Orthodox Church and built an Orthodox cathedral for the Vatican, for its part, so this is a definite ecclesiastical and religious success, although partial, and the fruits of which will be carefully cultivated in the times. Ukraine remains the thorny problem. Many Ukrainian citizens have never felt sufficiently supported by the Vatican in their struggle for genuine independence from Russia, and to create a more free and righteous society in their country. The Roman Catholic Church, unlike the Greek Catholic, was lukewarm towards the Euromaidan's uprising, of doubts and complaints that have a real basis. Because this pope is a carrier, as is natural, of a global vision influenced by the fact of being a man of Latin America and therefore alien to the secular ecclesiastical disputes of old Europe. Despite being very close to the Argentinian Greek Catholic, he has recently hinted to believe uniatism a historical mistake. Then he is not always aligned to North American political interests and appears to be in favor of a multipolar trend. I would add that his relational style, while explicit and sometimes disruptive in the internal affairs of the Catholic Church, in international business appears to be a bit too diplomatic and underground, lacking prophetic clarity typical of John Paul II, perhaps as a result of repeated media accidents that snared Benedict XVI during his pontificate. We do not know what will be the content of the meeting in Havana and the subsequent official statement. Even we don't know the outcome of the Great Pan-Orthodox Council, in the first case. Because it is a purely symbolic event, while important, the facts will give reason to Ukrainian Greek Orthodox primate who said these days he does not expect much new from the meeting. In the second case, I think Kirill will not get the Orthodox leadership that he seeks, nor at the end of the council or since. Indeed, I think that on the question of organization of the diaspora churches, for the highly doctrinal nature that characterizes it, that concern fundamental theological and ecclesial principles, such as that of the one church and the only bishop in the same territory, there is the real danger of a schism in the Orthodox Church. The Russian, Bulgarian and Romanian churches, favorable to their universal jurisdiction, on one side and the rest of the Orthodox world on the other. Finally, I think that the Ukrainian autocephalous Orthodox, some of which have harshly criticized the announcement of the next meeting, they should present it for what it is. Fueling the idea that the popes are doing a favor to Putin, they commit a dramatic own goal.